Father Tesla was known to talk to himself and even carry on conversations with different tones in his voice, a trait also noted in the inventor, especially in his later years. Milutin also trained his sons in exercises in developing memory and their intuitive faculties. Able to recite at length works in several languages, he often remarked playfully that if some of the classics were lost, he could restore them. My father spoke fluently a great many languages and also ranked high as a mathematician. He was an omnivorous reader and possessed a large library from which it was my privilege to gather a great deal of information during my years of life spent at home. Texts from this library included works in German by Goethe and Schiller, encyclopedic works in French by D'Alembert, and other classics probably in English from the 18th and 19th centuries. The inventor's colorful autobiography remains the primary source of information on his childhood. Although Dane and his parents appear prominently in the work, Tesla's sisters are barely mentioned. Certainly, he loved the girls. He exchanged letters with them regularly for the duration of his life, but they seemed not to have overtly influenced his upbringing. It was his mother whose untiring work habits and proclivity toward invention influenced the inventor to be. Whereas Milutin ran the parish and published his articles, Juka directed the servants and ran the farm, she had the responsibility of growing the crops, sewing all the clothes and designing needlework, a practice that made her famous in the region. Tesla also ascribes his proclivity to invention to his mother. She conceived of many household appliances, including churns, looms, and all kinds of kitchen tools. My mother descended from a long line of inventors. Starting before dawn, she did not quit work until 11 o'clock at night. In 1863, disaster struck the Tesla household. Dane, who was gifted to an extraordinary degree, was out riding the family horse, which was of Arabian breed possessed of almost human intelligence. The horse may have been the type easily spooked. The previous winter, it had thrown Milutin in the middle of the forest after an encounter with wolves, and had run home leaving him unconscious. The horse, however, was smart enough to bring the search party back to the scene of the accident, and thus the father was saved. This animal, which was cared for and petted by the whole family through the brother as well, but Dane died of the injuries. The family never really recovered. Dane's premature death left my parents disconsolate. The recollection of his attainments made every effort of mine seem dull in comparison. Anything he did that was creditable merely caused my parents to feel their loss more keenly. So I grew up with little confidence in myself, upset by his brother's death and the rejection by his parents, particularly his mother. The 7-year-old ran away from home and hid in an inaccessible mountain chapel which was visited only once a year. By the time he had reached the place, it was nightfall. There was little the boy could do but force his way in and spend the night entombed. It was an awful experience. Shortly after this tragedy, Milutin was promoted and given the parish of the ornate Onion Bulk Church in the town of Gospey. The family moved a few miles to Gospey, where Father Tesla also took a post teaching religion at the local gymnasium high school. Niko was of school age, so he began his formal education at this time. However, he had great difficulty adjusting to city life, for he missed the farm and the idyllic existence he had once enjoyed. This change of residence was like a calamity to me. It almost broke my heart to part from our pigeons, chickens, and sheep, and our magnificent flock of geese, which used to rise to the clouds in the morning and return from the feeding grounds at sundown in battle formation so perfect that it would have put a squadron of the best aviators of the present day to shame. The boy would wake up in the middle of the night with nightmares of Dane's death, which he claimed to have witnessed, and of the funeral, which probably involved an open casket. A vivid picture of the scene would thrust itself before my eyes and persist despite all efforts to banish it. To free myself of these tormenting appearances, I tried to concentrate my mind on something else by continuously conjuring up new images. I was oppressed sick by thoughts of pain in life and death and religious fears, swayed by superstitious beliefs, and lived in constant dread of the spirit of evil, of ghosts and ogres and other unholy monsters of the dark. It was at this time that Tesla began to have what today are known as out-of-body experiences, although he never ascribed anything mystical or paranormal to them. Blurred at first, I would see on my journeys new places, cities and countries, live there, meet people and make friendships, and however unbelievable it is a fact that they were just as dear to me as those in actual life, and not a bit less intense in their manifestations. Tesla stated he had such great powers of eidetic imagery that he sometimes needed one of his sisters to help him tell which was hallucination and which was not. Like Dan, his thoughts were often interrupted with annoying flashes of light, These psychoneurological disturbances continued throughout his life. On the positive side, the problem was also attributed to his inventive bent. He could use his powers of visualization to mold his various creations, and even run and modify them in his mind before committing them to paper in the material world. While still in grade school, Niko had obtained a post at the local library in Gosby classifying the various books, but he was forbidden to read at night for fear that his eyes would be strained in dim light, and Milutin would fly into a rage to stop him. Undeterred, Niko would swipe some household candles, seal up the cracks in his room, and continue reading through the night. The book that Tesla claimed changed his life was Abafi, a story translated into Serbian about the son of Abba by the Hungarian author Josica. Up to the age of 8, my character was weak and vacillating. This work somehow awakened my dormant powers of will, and I began to practice self-control. At first, my resolutions faded like snow in April, but in a little while I conquered my weakness and felt a pleasure I never knew before, that of doing as I willed. Thus, by the age of 12, he was successfully experimenting with acts of self-denial and self-mastery, a paradoxical pattern which played itself out repeatedly throughout his life. Simultaneously, Tesla began to develop peculiarities probably stemming from the stress associated with his brother's death, strained relationship with his parents, and denial of his sexual desires. At this time, he became ill and claimed that a heavy dose of Mark Twain's writings turned his spirit and cured him. 25 years later, when I met Mr. Clemens and we formed a friendship, I told him of the experience and was amazed to see that a great man of laughter burst into tears. During this period, I contracted many strange habits. I had a violent aversion against the earrings of women, but other ornaments as bracelets pleased me. The sight of a pearl would almost give me a fit, but I was fascinated with the glitter of objects with sharp edges. I would not touch the hair of other people, except perhaps at the point of a revolve. I would get a fever by looking at a bitch. Even now at age 61, I am not insensible to some of these upsetting impulses. The youngster, however, also undertook normal boyhood adventures, including a few near-death experiences on one occasion by falling headlong into a huge kettle of boiling milk just drawn from the paternal herds, on another occasion nearly drowning after swimming under a raft, and on a third occasion, I nearly being swept over a waterfall at one of the nearby dams. These were rather unpleasant experiences, but not as bad according to the inventor as the following. There was a wealthy lady in town who used to come to the church gorgeously painted up and attired with an enormous train and attendants. One Sunday, I had just finished ringing the bell in the belfry and rushed downstairs when this grand dame was sweeping out, and I jumped on her train and tore it. Livid, my father gave me a gentle slap on the cheek, the only corporal punishment he ever administered to me, but I almost feel it now. Niko became ostracized and avoided social interaction. Fortunately, he was able to redeem himself through his inventive mind. One day, the local firemen brought out their new engine and started a fire to demonstrate it. To the embarrassment of the officials, the hose, which drew its water from the local river, would not work. Intuitively, Tesla realized that there was a kink in the rigging. Tearing off his Sunday best, he dived into the water, unscrambled the line, and became the hero of the day. This event became a strong inducement for the boy to continue his interest in invention. Simultaneously, this act symbolized a new way to obtain love and admiration, not only from his parents, but also from society. Between the ages 10 and 14, Niko attended the real gymnasium equivalent to junior high school. It appears that both his father and uncle taught there. It was a fairly new institution with a well-equipped physics department. I was interested in electricity almost from the beginning of my educational career, he wrote. Read all that I could find on the subject, and experimented with batteries and induction coils. Tesla also began experimenting with water turbines and motors that utilized power derived from differentials in air pressure. His goal, though unattainable due to a flaw in his logic, was a perpetual motion machine that would work by maintaining a steady state vacuum and harnessing like a windmill the rush of incoming air. This movement, he hoped, would turn a generator endlessly. After seeing a drawing or photograph of Niagara Falls, Tesla announced to his uncle Joseph that one day he would place a gigantic wheel under the falls and thereby harness it. Most likely, he also visited the magnificent network of waterfalls at Pitfish Lakes for additional inspiration, as they were only a day's journey away. In 1870, at the age of 14, Niko moved from Gosby to Karlovac, Karlstad, where he saw a locomotive for the first time to attend the higher real gymnasium, located by a swamp on a tributary of the Sava River near Zagreb. The youth lived with his aunt Stanka, his father's sister, and her husband, Colonel Brankovic, an old war horse. During his stay at Karlovac, he frequently visited his cousin Milika Zorik at the family estate in Timingage Niko, who would often go there for vacations. Found it to be a sort of sanctuary at Karlovac. He was trained in languages and mathematics. His most influential professor was Martin Zikulik, a physics teacher who demonstrated the principles by apparatus of his own invention, a freely rotatable bulb with tinfoil coatings which was made to spin rapidly when connected to a static machine. It is impossible for me to convey an adequate idea of the intensity of feeling I experienced in witnessing his exhibitions of these mysterious phenomena. Every impression produced 1,000 echoes in my mind. Through hard work, Tesla condensed the 4 years of schooling into 3 and began to plan a way to approach his father with his controversial decision not to enter the ministry, but to study engineering instead. It is not humans that I love, but humanity, he tried to tell his father. During his last year at Karlovac, after a day of exploration by Anyby Marsh, he caught a fever which he said was malaria. The seriousness of his condition may have been exacerbated by an inadequate diet. I was fed by my aunt like a canary bird. When the colonel would put something substantial on my plate, she would snatch it away and say excitedly to him, "Be careful, Nico is very delicate." I had a voracious appetite and suffered like Tantalus, but lived in an atmosphere of refinement and artistic taste quite unusual for those times and conditions. Upon graduation, Tesla received notice from his father that he should go on a hunting expedition as there was an epidemic in town. The youth returned to Gospey anyway. The streets were stacked with corpses, the atmosphere thick with smoke, for the people mistakenly thought that cholera was being transmitted through the air rather than by drinking water. Partly due to his weakened condition from his earlier illness, Tesla quickly became a victim. Bedridden for 9 months, he nearly died in one of the sinking spells, which was thought to be the last. My father rushed into the room. "Perhaps," I said, "I may get well if you will let me study engineering. You will go to the best technical institution in the world," he solemnly replied, and I knew that he meant it. The Teslas settled on the Polytechnic School at Graz, Austria, located 175 miles to the north first. However, the boy would have to serve 3 years in the army with a major war breaking out against the Turks. My lieutenant directed his son to pack his gear and go into the hills to avoid the draft. There the youth could maintain a loud profile and at the same time recover his health for most of this term. I roamed in the mountains, loaded with auntie's outfit and a bundle of books, and this contact with nature made me stronger in body as well as in mind. But my knowledge of principles was very limited. Misguided inventions of this period included a submarine tube able to convey letters and packages across the seas, and a ring around the equator for transporting people from one end of the globe to the other one day while playing with snowballs on the side of a mountain. However, Tesla discovered the concept of hidden trigger mechanisms able to unleash great reservoirs of energy. One found just the right conditions. It rolled until it was a large ball, and then spread out, rolling up the snow at the sides as if it were a giant carpet, and then with a new fellowship from the Military Frontier Authority, he began school in Austria the following semester. Thank you guys for watching. This is the end of part 3 of Nikola Tesla the inventor. Please like, share, subscribe and come back for part 4. Thank you.